In this video, I'm going to try and give you the best explanation of how to properly choose a real estate brokerage. If you're a new real estate agent going through your real estate licensing process, the first step to taking action once you finish your license is to choose a real estate brokerage. And there's a ton of options out there. And with more modern brokerages coming into the field and a lot of different opportunities and options, I want to explain not just the different details you need to look at when looking to select a brokerage, but I want to explain mathematically why you need to make certain decisions and what it's going to do to benefit you, the pros and cons to each, so that hopefully you can make an educated decision. And after I go through these 9 steps, I'm going to explain the mistake I made when I was a brand new agent choosing a brokerage and the brokerage that I choose now and why I actually made that decision, which is usually not what people think. So without further ado, let's dive into it. If you don't know who I am, my name is Mike Sherrard. I train thousands of agents every single year on how to scale their business using the modern strategies, and I am a licensed agent as well. So let's go through the criteria that you need to look out for when selecting a real estate brokerage. And a lot of these are things that nobody else on YouTube explains. I have no idea why. Maybe they don't want to go too in depth, but I want to explain exactly what you need to be mindful of. So there's going to be a lot of criteria in here. Again, 9 steps you need to be mindful of. So make sure you don't skip any of them because they're all incredibly important. So number 1 is looking at the split of a brokerage. So most brokerages have a split, which means that whenever you close a transaction, a certain portion of the income or the commission goes to you, a certain portion of the commission goes to the brokerage, and that's usually how most brokerages work. Now, there's a caveat to that. There are split brokerages and there's 100% brokerages, okay? Which are flat fee shops is what most people call them because you just pay a flat fee and you get 100% of your commission. Now, some people might say, well, Mike, why wouldn't I want 100% commission? What you have to understand is that when you have a split versus 100%, you have to realize where money flows and what that does for you. So if you take 100% of your commission, there's not much that the brokerage can afford to give you because they're not making much money. Whereas in most cases, and again, there are exceptions, in most cases, when you have a split and you're giving some money to the brokerage, they can afford to be more profitable and give more back to you. And what I want to help you understand, and I'm going to explain teams versus solo agents later because this is just related to the brokerage, not specific to joining a team or being a solo agent, which I will get into in point number 9. Now, there is this relationship in some cases where the higher the split, the more value, and the lower the split, the less value. However, there are certain cases, which I will explain to you at the end, where you can actually have a blend of both, where you can have a low split and high value. And when you have this intersection here, that is where you can have a brokerage that is very powerful and one that many people will go to. So start looking at what is the splits because ultimately you want to know what you're going to be taking home because there's brokerages that charge, 90-10, brokerages that charge 80-20. And to give you some example what this looks like, if you close on an 80-20, a $10,000 commission, whenever you close that deal, 80% or $8,000 would go to you and 20% or $2,000 would go to the brokerage. Okay, so that's how those splits work. And those are some different examples, but it's really mindful to be aware of the split of the brokerage because there's some people that I talk to, new agents looking to partner with me that get sucked into brokerages on a 50-50 split, 60-40 split, 70-30 split, which is a lot of money. And I'll get into that later as well as the teams. Now let's look at number 2, which is the cap. Now, some people might not know what a cap is, and I'm shocked at how many agents that have actually been licensed for years don't know what a cap is. And here's what a cap is. Not every brokerage has it. But what a cap is let's say you're on an 80-20 split and you've got a $16,000 cap. Okay? What this means is that when the 20% that goes to the brokerage equals 16,000, you now cap. And when you cap, in most cases, that means you go from the 80-20 to 100% commission. So what it's saying is that once the money that goes to the company equates to a certain amount, then you've paid everything you need to the company, and then you will start making 100% of your commission for the rest of that annual year based on your anniversary date in most cases. Now, what's dangerous is when you join a brokerage, or if you join a brokerage, which I don't quite understand why people do, with no cap. Because what that means is that if you're on an 80-20 with no cap, that means no matter how many deals you do, you're forever going to be paying the brokerage 20%, which equates to a ton of money as you start building momentum. But just something to be mindful of in terms of the cap. Now, the third thing is the fees. So this is broken down into multiple different aspects because there's, monthly brokerage fees, and there can be fees related to transactional. Whenever you close a deal, there can be fees related to listings. And so what you want to do is you want to be very mindful of the fees, because sometimes what happens when you choose very traditional brokerages that are relying on their brokerage brand name, they have very high fees because that's what they're justifying based on the brand name. So you have to be mindful of what do the fees include, because sometimes they will include just access to the brokerage. Other times it will include things like website, business cards. Sometimes it'll include signs. Sometimes it'll include brochures. Sometimes it'll include trainings, or CRMs is another big one. So you have to look at what are the fees, but not just what are the fees, what are you actually getting for those fees in return, so that you have a very clear idea, because as you're starting to see here, this is a mathematical decision amongst some of the other things that are not mathematical that I'll get into. And it's really important to understand why you're making certain decisions. Now, the next thing that is really important is looking at additional income opportunities. And this is something that's really interesting. So a number of brokerages nowadays are starting to offer additional income opportunities, whether it be revenue share, profit share, any sort of residual income. But this is an important thing, because as an entrepreneur, you have to be mindful of getting compensated as much as humanly possible for doing what you're doing. And some people don't quite understand these additional income opportunities, but the way that I look at it is, if you can be at a brokerage and do one thing and get a certain amount of stuff, and be at another brokerage and do the same thing and get more, why would you not want to do more if we're not doing any more effort? So looking at the additional income opportunities, is there profit share? Is there revenue share? Is there any sort of residual income? And looking at what else you get from that brokerage based on whether it be bringing some of your friends into the business or anything like that, but looking at what other additional income opportunities there are. Now, the fifth one, and this has been a really trending one lately with modern brokerages, is the concept of ownership. So there's a number of brokerages now that you can actually be an owner of the brokerage as an agent. And what I mean by that is not that you are the broker, not that you're the owner of the brokerage per se, but there's publicly traded stocks. So what happens is, by the nature of being an agent in these brokerages, you inherently become an owner of that brokerage. And I think this is important because when you start talking to real estate agents, it's always looking at rent, own. It's more important to own than to rent, because you get equity in a company, or equity in a property, or equity in a business. And I think this is really exciting because now it gives ownership to the agents. And this is something you should really consider is, do you want to rent your business, or do you want to own your business? And when a lot of agents start looking at this, they realize that, hey, I really would like to have ownership of my business. So look and see, do they have ownership opportunities as an agent? So now let's go on to the next one. Number 6, this is a big one, training. What type of training do they have? Because what happens a lot of time is brokerages have traditional training, and that's about it. But we're in a time where tech and social media, digital marketing, and all these things are coming into play, where there's a lot of times where agents are coming into a brokerage and they've got no sphere, no business, just moved to a new city, doesn't know anybody, and their broker is telling them to just leverage their sphere that they don't have and use traditional strategies. But the most effective way to build a sphere is modern strategies. And if you don't have that training, you have to go pay for this elsewhere, which again adds to the cost of the brokerage that could have had that training for you. So looking at not just the training, but the caliber of training, because that's one of the mistakes I made as a new agent. Is I joined a very traditional brokerage, the number one brokerage you could probably think of if you thought of a brokerage name, which I won't say. And what happened is the agent doing the training for us was once a week, and it was taught by somebody that hadn't sold real estate for like 20 years. And it was a time where technology was really important. So we weren't learning any modern strategies. And I hear that constantly from agents that reach out to me saying that they're not getting what they want out of the brokerage because they're looking to build it the modern way, the scalable way that allows you to create lifestyle, but they're not getting it. Now, let's look at number 7. This is a big one, support. Now, when we start looking at this, I want to explain why this is such a unique criteria, because here's the thing. When you look at most brokerages, and not all of them are set up like this, but this is why I get 1 to 3 emails a day from agents at most brokerages saying, Mike, I joined this brokerage. I was all excited, but I'm not getting support. I'm not getting a hold of my broker for like 2-3 days. So in most cases, what happens is you have one broker at most traditional franchise brokerages, and they wear every hat. It's an infinity sign, but I could make it a hat sign too if you want to. But what happens here is they can only give up so much time in a day. And when you have one person wearing every hat doing new agent onboarding, new agent training, brokerage training, marketing compliance, transaction review, getting sued and dealing with legal issues and all these things like that, it's really difficult for that one person to be able to give you undivided attention whenever you need to. And this is why a lot of agents at traditional brokerages struggle to get the support that they need to. But support is a very, very important one. Now, the next one is also really important, which is culture. Culture is really important because, again, you want to enjoy the place you're working at. You want to make sure that you're surrounded by like-minded people. We all know the typical saying that, you're the average of the 5 people that you're surrounding yourself with. And you not just want to be surrounded by top producers or people doing cool things that are, on the leading edge of real estate, but you want them to be sharing it. And this is a big thing about traditional brokerages and stuff to be mindful of. Again, there's lots of great brokerages out there. Is that most brokerages are set up in a way that, and this is why I went to the top brokerage in my city, or one of the top ones, is that I thought because all the top producers were there that I would become a top producer by being surrounded by them. But what you'll see is that they become your competition immediately. And when they see somebody that's hungry, driven, and motivated, they don't want to share their top strategies with you because you're going to be a threat to them because you're in the same brokerage, you're in the same market, and you might, they don't benefit from you in that sense. So looking at culture in terms of what are they doing for events? What are they doing for ongoing mastermind calls? What are they doing, to build up the momentum of the branding, to get you excited and stuff that's innovative and, how is everybody collaborating and connecting and things like that? That is very, very important. Now, the last one is interesting. And this is, do you want to be a solo agent versus do you want to join a team? It's a bit of a lengthier discussion, but I'm just going to get into the high level stuff. There's pros and cons to both. So if we kind of draw a line in the middle, the pro to a solo agent is you make more money because you're going to get all of the commission that you get aside from the split that goes to the brokerage. Now with a team, you get less money because you're going to have to not only pay the split to the brokerage, but you're also going to have to pay a split to the team. Now, another benefit to a solo agent is that you get flexibility with your branding and the recognition whenever you close deals and the brand that you built. Whereas with the team, you usually have to use their branding, not your own. So this would be own, this would be their branding. So you can still build up your personal brand, but you usually have to use very strict guidelines because you're under a team and you want to be building the team's brand. And the last thing is you just get more flexibility. And this usually have more criteria. Now let's look at some of the other things here in terms of that's kind of the pros. And now let's look at the cons, for example. When we look at the cons, when you're on a solo agent, typically you are solo, you're independent. And what happens is that means that you have to generate your own business, generate your own leads, learn yourself, be more independent, and be more thoughtful in the sense of you have to be resourceful. You have to look for things yourself. Whereas on a team, oftentimes, if it's the right type of team, you can get more support and more guidance and more training on top of the brokerage in order to benefit from, again, that's why you're paying this additional split to the team. And sometimes they will give you leads. So now what I want to do is I want to explain to you why I chose the brokerage that I chose in the beginning and in the end. So when I was in the beginning, I chose, again, one of the top brokerages in my city based on the brand name and all the top producers that were there. And when I went there, I got no training. I had not much help. I was trying to build my business the modern way using social media, and they were all telling me social media doesn't work, hit the phones and, pound the pavement, which I did. But again, I wanted to be surrounded by other people that were more inviting, wanted to be more collaborative and, more accepting of modern strategies. So I decided to join a different brokerage about 4 months after, and then now I'm at a different brokerage again. And I want to explain why I'm at the brokerage that I'm at now, which is EXP. And a lot of people are going to run when they see this because they just simply have been uneducated about how this actually works and they don't understand it. But if you do stick around to understand this, it completely changed my life. And I'm going to explain why when we go back and look at all the different 9 criteria that we talked about. So remember when I talked about having that beautiful relationship between, high value, low split, that's what EXP has, which is 80-20. Now, the next thing is I started looking at, well, what do the fees include, right? So fees. So what happens with the fees is it gives you your website, which at my past brokerage that had a higher split, higher fees, and higher cap, you didn't get a website, you had to pay for yourself. You get a CRM, and you get lead gen tools. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now, the next is where things get really interesting, which is at most brokerages that I've been at, whenever you become a top producer, which is what we're all looking to achieve, you get a trophy, right? Trophy with their name on it. Actually, you can probably see them right there, which look cool in my YouTube background, but do nothing for my business. At EXP, you get that entire $16,000 cap back every single year in stock ownership for free if you meet certain production criteria. So just by hitting certain production criteria, you get every dollar you paid into the company in the form of the split back instead of a trophy. Now let's go even further and start talking about some real interesting details. Whenever agents get into real estate, they say they want to build these two things: wealth, lifestyle. Okay, wealth requires four things, hence the wealth quadrant. You've got duplication, equity, residual or passive income, and multiple streams of income. At EXP, you have all four components of the wealth quadrant. At traditional brokerages, you usually have none, because you have one income stream that requires your time invested in creating it. So you can't actually create wealth just by being a realtor. Why would you not want to create wealth just by being a realtor? Again, this is why people invest in real estate, because they want equity in properties, duplication of doors, multiple streams of income, and passive residual income. So why would you not want that just by the nature of being a real estate agent? It makes no sense. So I started looking deeper and say, okay, well, in order to build lifestyle, you need two things. You need money freedom and you need time freedom. Well, you can make money freedom at any brokerage in the world, but you can't create time freedom because, again, you have one income stream that requires your time invested in creating it. So if you don't invest your time, you don't create an income, you have no lifestyle. Why would you not want to be at a brokerage that allows you to create lifestyle, which is why you got into the business, aside from loving people and wanting to help people? And again, just based on this, you get ownership of the brokerage. And then we start going to the training. And this is where things get really interesting, is looking at how you have the ability to set this brokerage up. So at EXP, there's 50 hours of training per week. I used to get 1 hour training a week. And here's the best part. It's taught by the top producers in today's market. So not years ago, not last decade, but today's market. So I started looking, okay, the quality of the training is good. And then you started looking at the fact that, again, based on how the brokerage is structured, at a traditional brokerage, again, going back to the little diagram that we had one broker that wore every hat. Now at EXP, you have multiple brokers in every single market, regardless of who you join and where you join. They wear one hat because there's 950 plus paid employees in the cloud actively working around the day to help support your business. So it started ticking all the boxes because you have a low split. You can actually make more money than you pay into the company, which is incredible. So remember when we talked about those 100% brokerages where you can, have 100% of your commission? EXP is often referred to as 100% plus, because when, again, you can't make an income claim, say the stock's going to go up, down, diagonal, horizontal because we're SEC regulated. But if the stock goes up and you get your cap back, like it did last year, then last year that $16,000 turned into over $150,000 more than you would have paid into the company, depending on when you got that back. So it's really interesting. And now I'm really grateful that I made this decision, because I initially did not look at it because of what people were saying, when I didn't look at the reasons why and the math why. And then when I came to EXP, as crazy as this sounds, but it's actually true, my income 10x in the last year. So again, it's really important to look at why you're making these decisions. What is going to be the best fit for you? I'm not saying this is going to be the best fit for you. I am explaining why I made the decision and why hundreds every single year decide to join me at this brokerage for these very reasons, among others. And I've got a ton of other videos on it, but hopefully that explains a couple of different things that you should be mindful of when looking to choose a brokerage. And hopefully it helps you make a proper educated decision. If you have any other questions, again, drop a comment below. Let me know. Feel free to reach out. I'm always here to help, and I just want to see you win and build the business of your dreams. So thanks so much for tuning in. As always, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.